correctly with the correct amount.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com.
Welcome to Me and Steve Talk RPG, the podcast where me and my friend Steve try and help you get the most out of your role-playing game experience.
Welcome back to Me and Steve Talk RPGs. I'm here with my friend Steve.
Hello, Steve.
Hello, Steve. We're going to talk some RPGs, but before we talk RPGs, we're going to talk some Exalted.
Yep. Well, so if anyone's
Sort of.
been... Yeah, well, kind of, we are, but we're going to talk about other people that talk Exalted, too. So, yeah, we're currently, well, I'm not sure how the second part of the recording is going to edit out, so I don't know if we're between or if we've just finished the short Exalted actual play we did with Decurion, one of our Discord people here who volunteered to come GM it, and we're in the planning stages of actually doing a short campaign with him that we're also talking about recording. But
Very excited. Very
yes,
excited.
very much so. But if you're interested in Exalted, which by the way, it is a pretty darn cool game. I can say that from having finally gotten to play with it. And, you know, we've talked about it before, specifically with the people from the Wondrous Atlas of Creation's Destiny, which I know is a mouthful, but it's a really cool podcast all about Exalted. And that's the simplest way to describe it. You know, they bill themselves as a podcast and website devoted to getting the most out of the fantastic setting for the Exalted tabletop role-playing game. You got a couple of different hosts. I know Aramithius is the main host. I believe there was Riel's, based on what I'm seeing in the notes for the last couple episodes. There's a couple of other people that are popping in or participating, so I don't know exactly what's going on there. But I can tell you, based on the conversation we had when Aramithius came on, and Rial's as well, that they have forgotten more about Exalted than I know.
Neither of us know.
You know, a couple of really cool people. I believe they're based out of, I don't know, the UK or somewhere over on that side of the Atlantic. Anyway, but yeah, you can find them at wondrousatlas.wordpress.com, or there'll be a link down in the show notes. I'm sure if you search them on any of your podcatchers, or I believe they've also gone to doing a YouTube broadcast of the show, so I think you can look them up there. I'm going to look into all of that when I go to write the show notes, but very cool people, very cool show, you know, and they're part of the D20 network, so check them out, or, you know, check out the podcast tab at d20radio.com, and yeah.
Yeah, very good stuff there. So, in sort of us planning this Exalted campaign, I've been thinking about time management and then also some personal campaign stuff I've been working on. And I wanted to talk to you about it because, like, I've been working and spitballing some ideas, and some thoughts have been rattling around in my head. And I just want to bounce them off somebody. So, we both know time management can be a real pain. It can be a real bear, especially like trying to coordinate your schedule with other people. I don't want to get into that. Well, we can get into some of that, but I don't want to get into that mostly. I want to talk about time management when it comes to in-game time, meaning trying to find the right balance that is going to keep almost everybody at the table entertained, if that makes sense, right? So managing your time when it comes to, we're gonna do 2 combats and a talking session. Or, you know, not all games are that, but you know what I'm driving at. We're gonna do 2 puzzles and a play. Or we're gonna do an extended role play session today. We're not really doing anything other than that. And I've been doing some, like, just trying to maximize, and I know it sort of has to be, you know, in my opinion, it has to be a natural progression. I can't just like, oh, we have 10 minutes of role play time, that 10 minutes is up, we need to move on. But I'm also trying to be a little bit more conscious of this is running long. We need to move this up and move it along. And I sort of go back to the interview we had with, oh no.
Was it Justin?
Yes. You heard it live, folks. My brain just completely went blank. But I go back to the interview we had with Justin where he was talking about, or they were talking about, doing just having a timer running on a combat, and when that timer ends, that combat ends.
Mm-hmm.
And talking a little bit around like, oh, we're not, I wasn't even really tracking hit points. I was just letting them beat on this thing until the timer hit this point, and then I was, sorry, then I was moved next. And I think that's kind of cool, interesting idea too.
Yeah. No, I remember now. Yeah, we had that interview with Justin Eacock from the Terrible Warriors about pacing,
Yep.
and he brought up a lot of really interesting points. And I remember, specifically the reason that we brought him on is because he has so much experience running games that are recorded and cut to fit in specific time slots. And he does, at least at the time, he was doing some like dinner and D&D type DMing and stuff like that, where you're running a game to fit a very specific time slot. And I felt like that could give us some insights. And you're right, I do think, like he brought up, how sometimes he's not actively tracking hit points. It's more, we let the combat go until, for a certain amount of time, and then we resolve it. I think that's a valuable technique. Um, you know, but it sounds like you're almost going, not even, because in that, at least in my brain, the conversation was about how do we make the game fit our time slot. Where it sounds like what you're saying is, how do I not let anything go to the point where I'm losing some of the table because they've lost interest. Am I reading what you're saying right?
I am trying and exercising in a thought exercise at this point because I don't have any active tables, but I'm trying to basically maximize efficiency.
So I've got a lot of thoughts on this, and
Hmm.
on the surface, boy, part of me goes in some form or other, be it, like Luca from UVG said, role play is folk art, and if we're trying to put art in a box, are we missing the point?
Well, yeah, I agree with that.
That's a
I'm
response.
I'm not saying, like I said, I am not trying to boil my campaigns down to an algorithm, an equation, and just plug and play that every week because that's boring. And I get that. What I'm trying to do is I've noticed that I have a weak spot for letting things run too long, letting my players just go too long and role play and get, you know, I just find I find myself in a spot where it's like, okay, we need to allow them more limited time. I need to introduce, I feel like it's more of a conversation for me myself that I need to introduce like, oh well, we have to crack down on, like, not crack down on, but like there's no reason why a conversation about where the shopkeep is needs to go 20-30 minutes. And I feel like it's just a mistake on my end that I'm just letting my players talk too long, essentially. And I
Well,
know that's not necessarily a bad thing because if they're having fun, they're having fun. But I can tell that, like, in the past, I've lost some of my table because I've let roleplay moments go too long. And I don't know. Maybe I'm just talking. I don't know. But I think it's something that I've been trying to think about and work on a little bit. And
well,
yeah.
I'm going to bring up a point that Brev made in the conversation I had with him, that unfortunately your internet service provider wouldn't let you participate in. And it's something I hadn't thought about, but he brought up that in many cases in film, as the audience, and keep in mind that in RPGs we're both the audience and the actors, so
Hmm.
there's a line here to balance. But he said, think about how many times in film you join the scene just slightly late and you leave just slightly early.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Right.
it sounds like, and again, I'm really just parroting what he said here, but it almost sounds like, and I will say as well, I'm guilty of doing exactly what you're talking about, of just, now the players are doing their thing and having fun, let them have at it, right?
Yeah.
But I think, like he brought up, like the classic, we'll call it, rom-com scene, whatever, where guy asks woman to marry him and we cut to something else.
Mhm.
And then we come back later to scene in the church, people at the altar getting ready to get married. We don't actually see the answer. And is that, that specific thing probably isn't something you're going to use, but, how often do you see cuts in film or TV that, yeah, it ends that just slightly early?
Yeah.
And, is that something you could leverage?
Yeah, that's kind of an idea that I've been kicking around. Like, not an idea, and I hadn't thought about it that way, but that's a great idea. That's kind of what I'm talking about, though, is that, like, in film and TV, we have everything's paced out, and if scenes linger too long, they have a purpose for taking too long, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's what I'm trying to drive at when I'm talking about timing my timing of these sessions, because I'm trying to drive at that more cinematic, more TV style episodic, where we're hitting these points and we're doing it within our time frame, and then also I'm not just letting my players wander around a room aimlessly for X amount of time because I don't want to drop them a hint. You know what I mean? And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's another thing, is I need to be better at just giving my players the stuff they need. Like, instead of making them look for things, just be like, here's the thing that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Is like, some of that is like not as enjoyable, but at the same time I can be a real, I don't know, that's why I like Gumshoe, I guess. I like
Well,
Gumshoe because it's like, I'll do the investigation, because that's what I like. I like, from my side, I like to be on the investigating side of, where is the key? Well, I don't know. Is there any loose panels in the floor? Like, you know what I mean?
yeah. So this actually, I've been trying to catch up a little bit on Ken and Robin talk about stuff, and Gumshoe ties into this because, well, Robin developed Gumshoe, and we played a little Gumshoe, and what I think is so neat about Gumshoe is it mechanically solved in a way the problem of what if they fail the roll. Because, right, you go, I'm just going to spend a point and I find the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing I like about Gumshoe, is I'm tired of looking for this thing. I'm just gonna spend this point and find it.
So I was listening to them, and they were talking about some other stuff, but they were talking about failure and how to adjudicate dice failure in a game in a way that isn't boring, right? Because we all know you don't find anything. Well, that's boring. You can't open the door. That's boring, right? And they were talking about, like, the example they were giving was specifically like in the case of, say, a heist where, yeah, even in like a more of a modern or a cyberpunk setting, you're trying to break into a building and your team starts failing stealth rolls.
Yeah.
Well, okay, this is a problem, right? Because now how are they going to break into the building? And our instinct, I think often because of what we kind of have, at least for me, what I kind of came up with in role playing was that failure was immediate.
Hmm.
Well, they were bringing up, okay, don't treat failure as immediate problem. Maybe that means you tripped an alarm, and because of your research, you have 3 minutes until the cops get there. Okay. So now you've taken that quote unquote failure. They haven't not done the thing, but you've added an element of urgency to them getting the rest of it done. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or you do it the Genesis way. You save that little threat for later.
Right, you can do that. Or they put up, let's say they fail, but they really need this clue. So, cop shows up at the site they're breaking into. Turns out he's been suspicious of place X that they're breaking into for forever anyway.
Yeah.
So he tells the group, "Oh, well, look, yeah, get the hell out of here." But I'm watching you, and I'm watching them, and so now you've got this sort of other element you can bring in as, does this cop have leverage on them? Is he crooked? Is you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't catch them. It isn't a hard fail state, but that quote unquote failure has added another complication as opposed to an unsuccess. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's cool. I really like that.
Like, or just a matter of you have them roll, and their role is not so much to determine if they find, but how quickly they find.
Yeah, I've done that too. That's not a bad way to handle that situation. Just if they find, but the problem I have with that is you really can't lock mission critical things behind that. And I don't mean to say that to be like, oh, but no, because if everybody fails that role, you have to commit to being like, okay, well, they're not going to find it right now. They're just going to find it later.
Hmm. Yeah, or you change it where they find a partial clue. They were
Yeah.
going to find this big thing. Now they just find something that
You find the
is
hilt of
something
the
they didn't
sword.
know, but leaves them with more questions than they had in the first place.
Yeah, you find the hilt of the sword, or you find a part of the key. Um, yeah, definitely.
Like, I'm just kind of throwing some stuff I've heard out there in some ideas, right? But like, maybe instead of letting that search go on endlessly, they find something, but you do it in a manner where they've got something, but they know they need to get out. You know what I mean? Like, kind
Or
of create a push to move on in game terms where, how do I want to say like that illusion of choice, which I think is a powerful tool to use as a GM, where you kind of nudge them into doing the thing that you want them to do, but you make it feel like it was their idea, or you nudge them to move and then react to how they move, I guess, is maybe a better way to say it.
yeah, and that works, and I think that's really cool. I like the idea, and I do this kind of regularly. I like the idea of making players think it was their idea, where you just sort of implant a thought. Yeah, yeah, that's a great idea. You should
Yeah, like,
absolutely you should go to space. You're right. No, that is the right answer.
right, and look, that's the beauty of a tabletop game, is that, okay, well, I wasn't thinking they were going to space, but maybe they are, and so now what can I put in space to make, because in an investigation type scenario, which I think both of us probably tend to enjoy having those elements.
Mhm.
Yes, occasionally you want to let them go on their wild goose chase, because if you always find something everywhere you go, it becomes kind of boring. But at the
Yeah.
same point, you don't want to, what do you want to say, gate it so rigidly that they didn't go to the right place, so no, nothing happens.
Yeah, exactly. When I was young and I was doing all that, yeah, I did used to gate things and I didn't know what I was doing. Now that I've played and experienced playing games and now I know better than just to like, oh, they went to the wrong place. It's in the wrong place. It's it doesn't matter.
There's a balance, I think, right?
Yeah.
Like, yes, there is, okay, no, this wasn't involved. Or do they find something that they think is involved, but actually isn't, but the clue
Or
kind of seems to tie into it.
and I've done this too, where they go to the wrong place and you put a clue that points them to the right place, right? Uh,
Yeah.
The princess is in another castle, right?
Hmm.
Oh, well, what other castle?
Okay. So I'm just spitballing here, right? We were talking about just about, like, okay, they fail the role in this, maybe crooked cop shows up, whatever, at place A. So now they're at place B, and maybe that cop shows up again. It's like, what the hell are you guys doing here?
Yeah. Yeah, no,
And so
why are you
now
Yeah.
you have this angle to play of, well, is the cop getting suspicious of us? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
and the
is
cop may have nothing at all to do with the story.
he just happens to be, yeah.
Like, do you nudge them out with this nosy cop, security guard, whatever? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I'm
What
just
movie? I watched a movie where yeah, okay. Okay. I watched a Christmas movie called Jingle All the Way. It's got Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sinbad in it, okay?
okay.
It's a 90s Christmas movie. It's very goofy, it's very silly. Arnold keeps bumping into this cop who is like the first time he bumps into the cop, he's getting pulled over because he was passing everybody in a median. And then he like knocks the cop's bike over outside of a barber shop, and the cop like writes him another ticket. And it's this hilarious, early 90s goofy movie, but it's very much that idea of, oh, we just keep running into this same guy. Eh,
Right. Can you use something like that to kind of, how do I want to say this? I don't want to say instill paranoia, but like, can you use a tool like that to kind of mentally bump your players to, wait, this guy showed up. He's a pain in the butt. Let's go somewhere else. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, he's annoying. I don't want to be here.
Right, like I'm kind of spitballing here. I'm not saying that's a great thing, but maybe that's it can be a, so to speak, a reoccurring tool that it's a clue because he shows up, which means maybe there's nothing here.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And maybe there is something there. Maybe they need to actually just talk to that cop, but it might be deterrent to just point the wrong direction for a little. Because sometimes, and this is just a little mini rant, sometimes you just need to point your players in the wrong direction for a couple minutes.
No, exactly. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, but it's a balance because so
Oh yeah,
I'll
no,
say,
you don't want to do it permanently, and you don't
well, I
just the
think it's
opposite direction makes them a little bit more discerning about the information that they're taking in, because it makes you, how do I put this? It makes you basically an unreliable narrator of like, oh, well, we took the advice of that guy and he pointed us in the wrong direction, and so maybe we can't trust everybody we get advice from.
right. No, I think that's so. I wonder how much of this comes, and I'm just saying this. This is me thinking, right? We have become conditioned to story video games
Mhm.
where if there's text of substance, it's important. If you have a conversation with this NPC in the video game and it's more than, hi, how are you? Or, oh, the guards are really a pain in the ass today. They took my bread. If it's anything more than that, we key on it and go, that has to be something of import to the story.
Yeah.
And I understand from a production of a video game standpoint why that is, right? That's a resource. Creating that dialogue in the game is something that takes time, and because of capitalism, etc., they don't want to put time and money, therefore money, into something that doesn't enrich the experience.
Yeah.
But in the context of a tabletop, I think that has conditioned us to think, both as players and GMs, that if if there's no substance, it's boring. And I think in the context of an RPG, half of the fun is the cockamamie theories you come up with as to what's going on. You know what I mean? And you and I have both said this, right? How many times have you had a theory working for your game and the players come up with this crazy off the wall theory and you went, it is now.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. And I mean, to a sense, we're straying off the balance thing, but it feels like, or to
No.
the time
It
management thing, but it feels like there's some. this balance, I think, in a sense, right? This time management is created maybe in a way by keeping your players just enough off balance that you can push them out of okay. This is all tying together in my head, right? We were talking about how many times in film you join the scene a little late, you leave the scene a little early. So if you have this kind of keeping your players slightly off balance, you can push out of a scene a little early because they're already off balance. So it's a lot less of a nudge to do that, right? Like
Yeah.
so the Delta Green scenario that I ran for you, the last things
Mhm.
last.
Mhm.
There's a lot of stuff in that, some of which I added, some of which is in the text of the adventure, that is complete red herring. It has nothing to do with what's going on, but it's there to get the players going. Well, what if this? What if that? What if this other thing? Which allows you as the GM to then kind of, and I'm going to say smash cut, but it allows you to cut back and forth between things because they're mentally following this thing that really, okay, it's a weird thing, but it has nothing to do with the weirdness we're dealing with right now. But because they're mentally focused on weird thing B that has nothing to do with weird scenario A, you can cut in a way that you're not giving them vital information, but you're keeping them off balance and thus a little more suspense and actual interest because you haven't reached a peaceful resolution of weird thing B because it doesn't matter. But it not resolving has you still interested in the whole thing because, well, what about this thing? Does that make any sense or am I
Yeah, no,
rambling
no,
here?
no. I get what you're saying. Um, yeah, it's yeah. No, I completely agree with you. Um, I think I'm out of thoughts on this topic right now.
Well, but see, like I know I get what you're saying though, and it is tough to manage the time at the table because it's
It's free form and it's also like structured because I don't want to be setting timers unless I have to. But at the same time, I almost need to have some sort of timer idea. Yeah.
well, but I think that also goes to what is your purpose in playing the game? Are you having a good time? Are you trying to tell this, rich narrative story? Okay, the way you manage time in a Delta Green or Call of Cthulhu game is going to be very different from how you manage time in Havoc Brigade
Very much so.
because Delta Green or Call of Cthulhu or some sort of gumshoe thing is about the investigation. It's about solving the mystery. Where, a game like Havoc Brigade is about the fun we had along the way and really not very much about where it is we were going in the first place. So, I mean, I guess I don't know that we've come up to any answers to your initial what do you want to say quandary, but I think it's like I think it's a matter of be aware of what you're trying to do, be aware of what the rest of the table enjoys, and maybe we've talked about some ways to kind of bump things along depending on what it is you want to do. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, I a lot of this podcast is not us coming with solutions to all of the problems. We're just trying to spitball ideas and get you thinking and the way I think about things, especially. And so like I didn't come at this thinking, "Oh, well, we're going to talk about timing and I'm going to have the perfect answer for all of my timing problems." I think this is exactly the conversation I wanted to have, which is um yeah, I don't know, but maybe try this or maybe do that or think about it this way. And that's exactly what I think that's what we do best is just make people think about things differently.
Yeah, no, I mean, like you said, maybe, do you, and I'm just saying this because I feel like having played with you, this is something that you would have a tremendous amount of fun doing. If you're in a whatever your game is, maybe
Mhm.
you have, and I'm just going to call him a Barney Fife character that just seems to show up all the
Oh,
time
just a
as
bumbling cop.
as a and cut prompt. Like he
Oh,
shows up and the players all look at each other and you just go, and now we move on because that's the other thing that you want to talk about managing time. And so I actually got fully caught up to where I'm currently about halfway through the last episode of Carrie and Company.
oh, cool.
And one thing that strikes me about how Sean has GM'd that whole game is actually his use of time. And if you think about how much in that game, there will be, we zoom in on this moment, and this 3 minutes of time takes 4 hours of gameplay. I'm just,
Yeah.
making things up here to a point. But then he'll skip 3 weeks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get you'll just we're gonna play X amount of time and yeah, that's
So
cool.
I
I like
wonder
that.
too, as just because this kind of occurred to me, kind of maybe another tool to use in this kind of time management thing is a zoom in, zoom out.
Hmm.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
we're gonna focus on this for now. We're gonna focus on that next. Yeah, that's cool. That's a good idea too. But I think we've definitely discussed a lot of really great ideas. I think we've definitely spitball some really good ideas around. And I think it's time we move into game of the week.
woohoo! Game of the week.
Game of the week. Game of the week.
So I have one to kick things off. Mine's kind of basic, but I thought it was funny and thematic based on our logo.
Uh,
It's a game called D12s on the Shelves.
okay.
D12s on the Shelves. The description describes it as starting with a simple observation: why is the 12-sided die neglected in so many tabletop RPGs? Uh, and it's a BRP game. It's a PDF for $3. Looks like just sort of a pretty simple role-playing system for playing some odd dice that's not, D20, D6, 10. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it was just published January 22nd. So, yeah, just a simple little fun thing that I'm probably going to pick up and read. Like,
Yeah, I'm curious because when you say BRP to me, I think Chaosium's BRP, which is a D100 system.
yeah, that's what I'm curious about. I want to know how they're taking BRP and turning it into D12.
Yeah, I mean, like, I know, Librarian NPC, like, Gas Bashers is D12 driven, but yeah, no, this seems
Unless, and the only thing I can think, and like I said, I haven't picked this up yet, so I haven't read it. The only thing I can think is that they put basic role playing and drive through RPG auto corrected to BRP, but I don't know. I don't know. I have to get my hands on it and read it.
yeah, no, I mean, you're right. It looks interesting, and look, it's $3. I mean,
Yeah, it's really gonna break the bank on this one.
yeah. It look, I mean, I like D12s
I do like D12s. I do like D12s. That's why I was like, a D12 game. I'll pick up a D12 game.
because they're like they're satisfyingly chunky,
Yeah,
but they feel more angular than a D20 because the facets are bigger.
they're also easier to read than a D20, in my opinion,
Well, it's
because the
because
facets are
I have
bigger.
older eyes.
Yeah.
That's my excuse.
Oh, do you remember the context.com commercial? I have special eyes.
No.
Oh man. All right, somebody does. Anyways, moving on.
No, that looks interesting.
Yeah, I think it looks silly, and I think I could have some fun with that. I'm definitely gonna pick that up just to throw on a table at some point.
Okay, give me
But yeah,
just a second here to write this
sure.
down because I wasn't paying attention. All right, so mine is going to be one that's kind of been on. I've seen it a bunch for a while,
Okay.
and I don't honestly know how to pronounce this, so I'm going to say Swivers.
Yeah.
It's Swivers. And so on a whim, I kind of kept going, well, why do I keep seeing this? And so I opened it up to look at it. And I'm going to say what this appears to be to me on the surface is an OSR take on the Blades in the Dark theme.
Mm.
So it says it's a game about bastards. You and your gang of criminals scarper through heists and sewers, struck through the filth of the smoke, et cetera, and so on. And so the description feels very much kind of Blades in the Dark esque, like, and I'm drawing a blank on the name of the city in Blades in the Dark, but it feels very much like Blades in the Dark, but it's from this Melsonian Arts Council, and it says Luke Gearing is involved, who
Hmm.
known from, I believe it's Pirate Borg, and some
Yeah.
stuff like that. And then so I went down through, and actually the preview is a water full, like big sample watermark across literally the whole frickin' book. It appears
No, yeah.
anyway. The
Oh,
page count is
wow.
right.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
because
you
it
can
says,
actually just
now, but I looked into it a little bit. You have three stats, which are all like it's toughness, dexterity, and strength, basically, are your stats. I may not have the right terminology.
mhm.
So it feels like what they've tried to do is when, okay, combat and physical interaction are a major part of this game because it is heist and schemes and doing things. But I feel like kind of having a little bit of a grasp of, what do you want to say, the OSR ethos of maybe rulings over rules. The reason they don't have other stats in the game is because they want you to role play all that out to your own satisfaction and not be governed by the dice roll.
Right.
Like, because they also mention these are people who they did a Mothership Gradient Descent, which I think is a supplement for Mothership. And I
Mhm.
remember very specifically hearing an interview with the creative Mothership where he said not having a stealth skill in that game was a very conscious choice because in the flavor of horror that he was trying to do, he didn't want I hide from the thing to be statistically governed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I wonder, is this a way to get kind of this heisty Blades in the Dark, or maybe almost gritty Warhammery type thing going, but where it's intended for you to fully freeform the the social aspects of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel that. There's a couple things that come to mind when I was looking through this. The first what that comes to mind is an older first person, you could call it maybe a shooter. I don't wouldn't call it a shooter. It's a stealth action game called Thief. That sort of brings the same tone and vibe. And I had another game in mind called and I forgot the name of it. Dis hmm, hmm,
This, I mean, this
sorry.
almost, no, no, no. Like,
Oh,
this is,
Dishonored. Dishonored is another video game that's sort of like a stealthy, sneaking around, doing weird London stuff. And that's
Mhm.
what this kind of has that vibe of. And I like it. I dig it. I want to play this. I didn't know what this was. I sort of skip past this every time, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, it was like the title, what's this weird spelling? And so I opened it up just, and I'm like, oh, this seems, and there's a clip, it's what readers are already saying in the listing. It says very
Hmm.
Peaky Blinders and Taboo rather than D&D in London. Nice.
See, that's what I like. That's what I want. I want Peaky Blinders and Taboo. I like both of those things.
Right, and like I said, it because I know the one criticism I've heard of Blades, and not having gotten to play it myself, is that it seems to become very much a one-trick pony. And
I
I
haven't,
wonder
yeah. I can't
if
make that decision myself yet, but
right,
I've
right.
heard that levied.
And I wonder if what this is trying to do by overtly avoiding, at least just from an attribute level, anything social, is to say, look, all the social whatever is on you as a table to do, you know, it's between the GM and the players to go, well, how convincing is my argument? Play it out, not roll dice. And I like I said,
Yeah, I think that's cool. I like it. So,
yeah, but like I said, I very much get vibes of the Blades in the Dark kind of setting but I feel like it's a completely different take on that, if you will.
Yeah, and I dig that. I like that setting. That's sort of my main draw to Blades in the Dark is I like that setting. So, cool stuff. Cool stuff.
Yeah, so that's called I don't know, Swivers.
Swivers.
Again,
Yeah.
SWYVERS. There'll be links in the show notes. What is the PDF? Oh, it's PDF's $13 for basically
Yeah.
100 pages. So
That's not bad. That's not bad.
no,
If you're not sure that you want to buy it yet, you can always read it through the preview, unfortunately.
I mean, there's big red watermark sample preview across the pages, and the art looks kind of cool and thematic, and so
Yeah.
all right. So Steve from the future here, as I'm editing this, because information has come out since Steve and I sat down and recorded this, that the tickets for Gamer Nation Con 10 are actually up for sale currently. And they went on sale, well, as I'm editing this morning, when I'm editing this on Saturday, the 8th of February. Ticket sales opened this morning. There's some more information. There'll be links to all that in the show notes. But if you're interested in Gamer Nation Con, it is a fabulous little convention that the folks from the D20 Radio Network put on every year down in Plano, Texas. Wonderful time, 4 days of gaming goodness. Come game your heart out. It's role-playing games, board games. There are some people playing card games. Wonderful people. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be running games. I'm going to be playing games. GM Chris, you heard Brev talking about it a little bit a couple episodes back. I know last I talked with the other Steve, he was working on getting himself there, so he's obviously not available for comment now because it's now and not when we recorded. But yeah, if y'all are interested in that, there'll be a link in the show notes. Check it out. It is absolutely an amazing time. You've heard us talk about it before with various people. So, yeah, check the link in the show notes for Gamer Nation Con 10.
Well, as always, links to everything are in the show notes. Discord. Discord is our main mode of conversation at this point. Come check us out. Check us out on Patreon. Yeah, and we want to thank everyone for listening and remind you to be kind to one another. Get out there and play some RPGs, folks.
Yep. Take care, y'all.
Intro and outro music by the band 12 Noon. You can email us at meandsteverpg@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at @RPGs. Find us on Facebook at Me and Steve RPG Podcast. On Discord at Me and Steve RPGs. And as always, all of these links are in the show notes. Thank you, and be kind to one another.
How much for the cigar?
Cigar, $20, dog. You gotta go down the street to the store and buy that.